Jim Brown. No man ever ran with a football for as much yardage, and no man ever scored as many touchdowns. Jim Brown's career total of 12,312 yards gained rushing is the unscaled Everest of all records. Simpson's record is a mere way station on the treacherous climb toward this highest peak. I always thought Superman was white and wore a nest, said one opposing coach. But now I know he's black and wears number 32. Jim Brown was the locomotive and the speeding bullet, and all others were just tall buildings to be leaped at a single bound. Brown led the NFL in rushing for 8 of his 9 years. He journeyed through defenses designed specifically to stop him. He was a marked man every Sunday, but he never missed a game. In 1965, Jim Brown had the discipline to retire at the peak of his career, a simple yet infinitely complicated personal act that few celebrated athletes have ever achieved. He retired to make movies in Hollywood, but he left his legend where it belongs, on the football field as the best ever.
Well, it's been a very long season. We've come a long ways. I guess a lot of people are wondering just how we've come this far. I look at the season as far as, well, I look at it in three parts. Sort of like running a 440-yard dash. Normally in a 440-yard dash, you start fast, you coast in the middle, and then you kick it home. Well, the only difference in our team was that we didn't start too fast. We won a couple of ball games. We were a little shaky. But then we started kicking in the middle, and we won about 4 or 5 ball games, and we looked real good, and we were a very strong team. We gained a lot of confidence. And finally, on the end, we faltered a little bit. We gathered a little courage, and then we kicked it home with the final victory against the New York Giants. I think that the main reason for that was because of maturity, something that we had gained after last year's collapse. I think that we're going to go out, we're going to play one last game. And in playing this game, I don't know if we're going to win it. We're going to try awfully hard. The weather's going to be a big factor. What we'd like to say to all of you people out there who've supported us, we know that all of you can't get to the game. We're very sorry that there aren't enough seats in the stadium to accommodate each and every one of you. But we're all going to be playing this game for all the fans who've supported us over the years. Let's hope that the game comes out Cleveland victory.
One debate in pro football may never be laid to rest. Who is the greatest running back in NFL history? Some say he wears number 34 for the Chicago Bears. Others believe that while Walter Payton is a true superstar, there is only one Superman, Jim Brown. Brown was both locomotive and speeding bullet. He was a power runner whose power was beautiful to watch. Conversely, Payton is a beautiful runner, pure magic in motion. These men are the pace setters of the pro running game. Their styles are different, yet their results are the same. And so the debate rages on. Who is the best?
Well, there's no question in my mind, all due respect to Walter Payton, I just don't think that there's ever been a back like Jimmy Brown, a guy that had that tremendous size, the tremendous speed, the ability to make the big play, to break tackles. He did it all. He did it for a long period of time. Payton has done it all. He's done it for a long period of time. But I just think that Jimmy Brown is bigger and stronger.
For some reason, everyone wants to say Walter Payton is good and then put in a disclaimer. Because Walter Payton is good if you talked about all around, but the best is this guy. Then they want to get, and no one really has ever talked about Walter Payton as being as great as he is. I think as great as Walter Payton is, I think he's underrated.
The big thing I think that Brown had over Payton is Brown always played with a better team, I think, than Payton did. But I still think that Brown, to me, was the ultimate player because of his size. He was bigger than Payton in his speed. And I don't think he was ever really tested to his greatest ability. I think he walked away from it before maybe he had his greatest challenge.
The difference between the two players is that Payton is a much more complete player. Jimmy Brown was the greatest with the ball. Without the ball, he wasn't a great player.
People say to him, will say about him, he wasn't much of a blocker. They didn't ask him to block very often. Wasn't much of a receiver. That wasn't part of their passing game. He was just an unbelievably punishing performer in a different kind of game than we have now.
He believed in what he was as a ball carrier. And so we ended up by utilizing what we could get him to do best. I used to say, why shoot a pop gun when you got a cannon that you can use to do some good?
I think Walter Payton is the best football player. I didn't say he's the best runner. He's the best football player I've ever seen because he does everything. He runs with the football tremendously. He's durable. He does whatever we ask him to do.
Even as a rookie, Jim Brown proved he could accomplish whatever his team asked him to do.
And when we drafted him, I thought he was going to be a great back. It turns out that, for my money, he's the greatest running back of all time.
Brown left a lasting impression on friend and foe alike.
Jimmy Brown did things humanly impossible. And I watched him do it over and over and over. You watch a film of Jimmy Brown running a football. He's moving away from things that there's no way that he could see. There are instincts that other football players had never even thought of, I'm sure. He had all of that, plus he had the great determination to be the very best.
Jim Brown led the NFL in rushing every year he played except one. And his career total of 126 touchdowns remains the unscaled Everest of all football records. His critics always pointed out his failure to block. All Brown can do was run, was the classic critique, to which his coach, Paul Brown, replied, all Picasso can do is paint.
There have been many superstars in pro football, but only one Superman, Jim Brown. This Clark Kent in a three-piece suit was both locomotive and speeding bullet. His opponents, tall buildings to be leaped at a single bound, or merely shrugged aside at the line of scrimmage. Brown averaged over 102 yards a game, well over 5 yards per carry. But his most impressive statistic is that in 9 seasons, he never missed a game, despite the fact every defense was geared to stop him.
I realized I was a marked man. That works two ways. They're going to try to get me, but they're also in awe of me to a certain extent. So what I would do is I would walk up and down in front of their bench or do my exercise in front of their bench and let them get a good look at me. I would do it in slow motion, do things that were a little strange, and get myself together, but yet not give them any clues to where I was coming from. Very seldom ever talked to them.
While Brown never spoke to opponents, neither they nor his ex-teammates were reluctant to speak about him.
Jimmy Brown, to me, was the best runner that I'd ever played against. He had it all. He had great size, he had power, he had speed. But I think his biggest asset to Jimmy Brown that he was smart. He knew exactly where the defense was, he knew where his offensive players were, and he utilized all the talents that he had, and he was just unreal.
Jim Brown was a very intelligent individual. He was his own man. He was coming along at a time in professional football where you didn't speak out too much white or black. And I guess being a black ball player and being as strong as he was mentally and away from the field caused him some problems. But Jim Brown was not a bad individual. He was just a man who spoke out a little early. Jim Brown speaking today wouldn't mean anything.
Jimmy Brown obviously took more shots than any of these running backs today because he carried the ball more, and everybody wanted to knock him down. He never wore hip pads. He never wore thigh pads. He only wore shoulder pads and a helmet, and everybody took their shots at Jimmy. He asked no quarters. He gave no quarters. He got up after every play, and I personally don't like Jimmy Brown. Don't mind saying it on camera, but I certainly had to respect him as a football player, and to play 9.5 years and only miss one half of one game with a broken wrist is remarkable.
Also remarkable was his unique combination of brute strength, sprinter speed, and incredible balance. It was Jim Brown who brought the pirouette to pro football. But this was no ballet dancer, as anyone who tried to bring him down would attest. Dallas Hall of Famer Bob Lilly witnessed many of Brown's great runs. He'll never forget the first time he tackled him.
I had pursued around to my left, and Jim Brown he ran to his right. I was on the 7-yard line, and I was in perfect position to tackle Jim Brown. When I woke up a few minutes later, my face mask was pushed on my face, and he'd scored a touchdown. And that was the first time I said, man, that guy's a lot stronger. I never thought he was that strong.
Jimmy Brown did things humanly impossible. And I watched him do it over and over and over. You watch a film of Jimmy Brown running a football. He's moving away from things that there's no way that he could see. There are instincts that other football players have never even thought of, I'm sure. He had all of that, plus he had the great determination to be the very best.
I got to say, you know, in due respect to all the football players who are playing today with their great speed and everything, to me, Jim Brown, I've been watching football for a long time. I think Jim Brown is probably the greatest football player, running back that's ever played the game.
I think in all the years that I played and in all the years that I broadcast since then, which will be 24 next year, without question, the most impressive player I've seen was Jim Brown. Just such a durable, fast, powerful, impressive human being. Intimidating in his presence almost. But just by the way he warmed up, just by the way he jogged down the sideline, by the way he walked back to the huddle after you'd swear he'd never get up. And he looked like he would never be able to carry the ball again. He was just so deliberate and so slow, and the next play he'd go for a touchdown, bouncing off 5 people.
Jim Brown had a combination of speed and power that was so awesome that I really have not seen those total assets in a player since Jim Brown. To this day, still remains as the greatest ball carrier I've ever seen.
To those who played with him or against him, Jim Brown remains the greatest runner of all.
I played 9 seasons, I never missed a game, and I never laid out on the football field. Guys now accept the fact that they can be hurt slightly, run off the field, get themselves together, and come back. I might not have the greatest ability of everybody, but the one thing that stands is that when it was time to play, I was there.